Okay. Recording is on. We would need to check audio.
Anybody out there? Can you hear us here in the council chambers? Mr. McCur, you see your name on the screen. If you can hear it, you can unmute. Tell us you hear us. All right, good evening, everyone. This is the Garden City Planning and Zoning Commission meeting, Wednesday, March 16th. Let the record show that Commissioners Wild, Commissioners Montoya, and Commissioner Brown are in the room and are here. So we will roll to the Pledge of Allegiance. Next, so everyone stand. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice. All right, for the staff, do you have any changes to the agenda?
Well, we have subdivision 2020-0002 Honsick Townhome subdivisions requested to be moved to April 20th.
Okay.
Planning and zoning. So move to the consent agenda.
Okay, so far, as we move to the consent agenda, it contains minutes, approving the minutes from our January 19th, 2022 meeting, also the February 16th, 2022 meeting. Item C, subdivision FY 2021-10, also going to be on the consent agenda. The applicant is requested to move that to date certain April 20th as well. And then the one that Anna just mentioned, subdivision FY 2022-2, for the same reason, the applicant is requested to move to a date certain. The other two items on the agenda we will hear tonight, so the consent agenda will be so we were ready for a motion. Thanks for asking. Commissioner Moore.
Agenda consisting of minutes for 16, 22, this would be to the meeting to the as well as SCP 2022-2 subdivision. Also
A motion. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye for the approval of the consent agenda. Okay, we'll move on to our first item 4. I'll just cover real quickly the flow of format of the hearing for each item. The chair will briefly introduce the application. Then the applicant will come up and present. They will have a 15-minute time frame in which to present their application. Staff will present also after that for a 15-minute time frame as well. After that, we will open up to a public hearing if there's anybody either in Zoom or in the room that wishes to give public testimony for the application to do so at that time. The applicant will then be able to come up and provide public testimony. And then at that point, we will close the public hearing. And then the discussion will move to a discussion only among commission members. And then hopefully get to a motion and a decision. After that. So, given that, we'll go to our first item on the agenda here in the business section. Conditional use permit FY 2022-9. As Mayor Ali is requesting the use of vehicle sales at 112 West 42nd Street in the C2 General Commercial Zone District. So, the applicant, it's your turn, sir. Come on up and.
Okay, thank you. No, thank you so much, guys, for letting me be here. So we own the dealership on the corner, Ozzy's Car Company, and the next to it behind, and then we own that land behind it. And what we wanted to do is put a shop right on the other side of sorry, a little bit nervous. We wanted to put a shop because we wanted to sell some of the older cars that we get, and we get some of the collector's cars, and we cannot keep them aside. So we wanted to put a 40 by 60 shop right there on the site, so we could sell some of the older cars that I've been in Garden City since 2010 is when I bought that place, and my whole goal is to just better and improve that corner right there. And I don't know how many of you guys drive through that area. I try to be really clean and really nice. We do sell used cars, but I try really hard to make it to be really a good area right there. So that shop would help us a lot with our sales. We employ 12 people that work there right now. So that would help us with a little bit of that increase on these older Mac and models of a car that we could store in that building inside of it. And I would be grateful if we could do that.
You're good. We do get the opportunity to ask you any questions.
Yes, please.
I will open it up to the commissioners and ask them if they have any questions for you.
Yes, please.
Commissioner Montoya.
Thank you for being here today. I have a question just on your potential use on site.
Yes.
So it sounded like it had the useful for which is selling cars.
Yeah, but we will not take the customers to that facility though, because we have that 4195 area. That's where the car will come in. Mainly what we're doing is using that as a storage facility where we would put, say, if you had like an old Camaro, we would keep that old Camaro in that shed. We wouldn't want it to be outside. And then if somebody would want to buy it, we would bring it to the 4195 to our main business area where they would look at the car.
And would there be a point we would bring a customer back there to purchase the car or to show cars?
No, we would try to keep that only to be used for our employees where they, walk over there, get the car, bring it up to the front of that area.
Commissioner Brown.
Sir, I presume that you read the staff report and recommended the draft.
Yes, sir.
Condition and things for approval.
Yes, sir.
Are you in agreement with all requirements I request a waiver, we're still requesting a waiver for the sidewalk requirements.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I still would, I want to make that place to look, to make it look nice, but I would like to see if I can get granted on that sidewalk, since there's no development right now going on. And then when, if somebody ever develop the next, because there's 2 lots that are vacant right next to it. When they start doing that, I would like to put that sidewalk there, but maybe make a pathway or walkway. There's not gonna be any traffic hardly that it would go to that area. So I want to see if we could get granted on the sidewalk for when you guys, if somebody ever developed that other side of the park, I would be still be okay to pay for that sidewalk.
In the event that we didn't approve that, right? In other words, we went ahead and required sidewalks and or there is an alternative in there that depending on what we decided to do was with embed some kind of pathway where they would have to be protected from traffic. Some kind of curb. Let's say that in the event we didn't approve your request for waiver, then what would your preference be with regard to the sidewalks?
I'm sorry, guys, I feel like I really didn't think that ahead of time, but I would like to see if we can make that pathway, because right now I really don't have the money anymore to spend for the sidewalk. I'm gonna be honest. There was a salesman that came in, sold me the building. It felt really nice, so I said, yes, let's do it. And I bought the building, okay? And then, but farther down the road, I'd be more than happy to put a sidewalk in when time comes into there, but maybe putting that pathway for now to keep it where it's secure and safe. And we'll make it to be really nice for our whole area there. I don't know if you ever drove that way or up towards Curtis and stuff like that, but we tried to keep it really nice. So it's gonna look good.
But that you're talking there about pathway or sidewalk on 42nd Street. What about the pathway and those sidewalks and landscaping and hardscape that is a requirement right now that would be going along Chimney? Have you requested a waiver for that?
I have not.
Well, and one of the things I feel Chairman, I believe Canada is prepared to address some of those issues. And I, for one, after she talks, before we go on, I think I might have some questions for this. Very good. Very good. Commissioner Clay.
Yeah. So I'm not sure if the staff is apparent that Zoom people cannot.
You know, I just went to my office to double check and I can hear from my office. It's really,
You could, okay.
I could, yes. I can go back and double check again.
Mr. Chairman, where did the screen Terry, Patty's audio, you very similar. The audio is on its for audio. So
Terry, we just see your first name on the screen. Can you hear us at all? You can unmute and let us know, please.
Yes, I can hear nothing but echo. I can hear the applicant very clearly. but you cannot hear the commissioners. It sounds like you're in the bottom of a well. And I apologize for taking my name off. There was no other way to communicate. There's no chat room.
So you can't,
Whoa, there you go. Now I heard it.
okay. So you can hear us now, all right?
Now I hear you. Now I hear you. Great. Thank you very much for whatever you may have done.
You're welcome. I'm glad it's working. Terry, I'm checking with you one more time. Can you hear us?
Jenna's on from her office.
And Jenna, can you hear us?
Chairman, I can, but it's quite faint.
Check, check.
I suspect if maybe turning up the mic volumes might work.
What if we're really close to our mics? Does that help? Can you hear me?
Chairman, I can. I think if it was the individual noted as Terry that was having issues, can we confirm that they can hear?
We did just try to call out to Terry and there was no response, although the other participant, Mr. McGurr, did say he could now hear us.
Yes, I
Okay.
hear you very well. Thank you.
And just to note too, I had my volume turned quite down far, so I hopefully the individual noted as Terry can hear. If there's any opportunity for that individual to hear at all, there is a phone number that you can call in that's noted on Garden City's website as well as the agenda.
Okay. So Terry, you probably can't hear us, but if you can, there is a phone number you can dial. It's listed on the agenda. That should be a second way to have audio to the meeting. All right. Okay, we'll continue on here. Commissioner Wild, did you have any questions?
Not at this
Okay.
time. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, sir. You will have a chance to come back up. We'll now hear from staff. Thank you, Hannah.
Thank you. I'll share my screen. All right. Good afternoon, commissioners. This is a conditional use application for Ozzy's Car Company. They are proposing an expansion to a vehicle sales located at 4209 West Chinden, 4195 West Chinden, and 212 West 42nd Street. The applicant has mentioned in discussion with staff that the purpose of the proposed shed located at 212 or 112 West 42nd Street will be to store vehicles that are not displayed on the car lot towards the two car lots towards West Chinden. With this purpose, the lot's primary function is to be that of a storage facility. Storage facilities are not allowed in this zoning district, which is C2 General Commercial Zoning District. And as it is not permitted, it cannot be in that property. As a way to allow for the storage of vehicles, the applicant has wished to expand their conditional use permit to include that storage facility at 112 West 42nd Street, but it also includes those two other properties on Chinden. The documents submitted with this conditional use permit application do not show the proposal of a 5-foot wide detached sidewalk along the frontages of 42nd Street. However, the lack of sidewalks does appear to be in non-compliance with a previous conditional use permit fiscal year 2017-4. The documents submitted in conjunction with conditional use permit 2017-4 a conditional use permit for a wireless communication facility located at 4195 West Chinden. In that conditional use permit, one of the conditions required that the detached sidewalk be installed prior to a certificate of occupancy being given. However, the certificate of occupancy was given prior to the sidewalk being installed. Staff has been in conversation with that conditional use permit applicant, as it is not the same applicant. It was for Verizon as opposed to Aussie's. But that being said, staff does believe it could be more of a civil discussion as to who actually installs the sidewalk, knowing that it is a condition in this conditional use permit as well as the previous conditional use permit. As required by code, we'll have the eastern frontage of 4209 right here where my mouse is, have to have sidewalk installed per Garden City code. We'll have the eastern frontage of 112 requiring the 5-foot wide detached sidewalk, and then the western frontage of 4195 West Chinden needing that new sidewalk installed. To stay consistent with Garden City sidewalk standards and other conditional use permit applications and conditions, there is verbiage drafted in the decision document to require 3 alternatives on Chinden as far as sidewalk installation goes. The property line of Aussie's does actually run along this yellow highlighted line. So any sidewalk that might protrude into the parcel boundary would actually be within the parcel and not within the right of way if that sidewalk were to expand. Right now, the sidewalk in front of 4209 West Chinden is about 12 feet wide, give or take, depending on the area. It is the concrete sidewalk with the asphalt that is seen on this section of Chinden pretty typically. So the condition in the decision document for the Chinden sidewalk is dependent mostly on conversations with ITD. The way the decision document is drafted is essentially number 8 as of right now. That condition under prior to occupancy is the most preferred sidewalk alternative, with the 12-foot wide concrete sidewalk and 5-foot by 8-foot tree wells for the class 2 or 3 street tree. Of course, this will need to have further discussion with ITD, and we'll see how the conversation goes. That's why those other 2, number 9 and 10 conditions are in the decision document. The applicant has submitted a sidewalk waiver. However, it was only for 42nd Street. Staff and the applicant haven't had many conversations regarding the sidewalk requirements along West Chinden Boulevard, despite there being the draft sent about a week ago for the applicant to review. The deciding body may require installation of sidewalk improvements based off of Garden City Code. The deciding body can decide which portion of the site needs to install sidewalks and improvements or no sidewalk based off of the analysis given in the site's specific considerations. If the installation of curb, gutter, and concrete sidewalk is found to create an undue hardship for the applicant, the deciding body may also authorize a pathway as an alternative for pedestrians to safely traverse the properties. That being said, though, the deciding body cannot or will not consider the following, and I'll list them out in making their determination of undue hardship. So 1 would be the lack of sidewalk on adjacent properties. 2 would be the loss of parking, 3, ownership of property, 4, the installation of sidewalk constitutes an unexpected expense to an applicant. 5, cost of improvement versus anticipated revenue of the project. And lastly, the desire of the applicant or property owner to not have a sidewalk. So the items I just listed cannot go into the consideration of granting the sidewalk waiver. On another note, there is lack of landscaping and the application did not submit a landscape plan for me to review. However, there was a condition in that previous conditional use permit to require some of the landscaping. It appears that the landscaping was installed, however, it has not been maintained as it was conditioned in the decision document of that previous CUP. But with that being said, this conditional use permit has triggered additional landscape requirements, such as 5% of the site needing to be landscaped, and any of the street trees based off of street frontage and actual linear frontage of the property lines. That is more in detail in the staff report, and it has been conditioned to install all of the required landscaping. The drafted decision document consists of many generalized conditions. When staff makes such generalized conditions, it makes for the ongoing approval processes difficult to reach complete compliance, as there is a continuous effort to require particular items over and over again. And with multiple people reviewing, some items end up getting lost or not installed properly as originally conditioned prior to a building permit being issued or certificate of occupancy being issued. So keep that in mind as the decision document has been drafted with a lot of those generalized conditions. And lastly, I would just like to note, though it might not be as important right now, but we did not receive a lot of agency comments, and the agency comments that we did receive only they regarded 112 West 42nd Street as the only parcel, because that's how the application originally came in. It wasn't until later and after we noticed the agencies that the other 2 properties were involved, that we actually had a complete application. So any of the agency comments that you're seeing are thinking only of 112 West 42nd Street. And with that, I stand for questions.
Okay, thank you, Hannah. Commissioners, any questions for staff? Commissioner Brown.
Mr. Chairman. So if we were to follow what the code says, and understanding that C2 does not authorize a storage facility as such, so you could do that, and that's what brings, so this CUP involves all 3 parcels. Am I correct in summarizing, if we were following our requirements, there would have to be a pathway or a sidewalk along 42nd Street? Is that along both sides?
Yes, so it would be along the one side of 112 and then both sides of 42nd Street.
And along Chinden in the front of both parcels?
Yes.
If we're talking about the landscaping that would be required as a result of this application, not the one that was apparently accomplished, but they weren't maintained, so that landscaping isn't there or visible, correct?
Yes.
How much landscaping are we talking about? How many trees and bushes, a rough number?
Right. So it would be 5% of each site needs to be dedicated to landscaping. Then within that, 70% of the landscaping needs to be of live material. But to get into more nitty gritty figures, there needs to be. So the staff report on page 16 goes into detail as to the required street trees, not bushes quite yet, but the required trees along each frontage, and that's broken down by each property and the street. So I didn't add up all the trees, but for example, the property located at 4209 West Chinden needs 16 trees total. And that's based off of the West Chinden frontage, the West 42nd frontage, and then the Stockton Street frontage.
All right, that's all I have.
Okay. Thank you, Commissioner Brown. Other commissioners, any questions for staff?
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Wild.
the description of the existing CUP refers to vehicle sales for the main lot and repairs incidental to vehicle sales. Storage is not part of that, but is there a distinction in the city code that you are aware of that describes what's repairs incident to vehicle sales in a CUP distinguished from storage? Can a car sit there for 6 months getting incidental repairs while it's being truly stored? Does that question make sense?
Kind of. So where we would find those provisions off of the top of my head, it
Yeah.
would be in Garden City Code 82C. And then specific to either the vehicle repair portion, which is vehicle services. I know that section of code does go into detail as to how long a car can sit at a particular place without getting repaired or moved. But other than that, without having time to
Sure,
look into
yeah.
it, I don't
No,
know
I
off the top of
appreciate
my
that.
head.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That's all I have.
Thank you. Commissioner Montoya.
Chairman, so if I'm understanding this correctly, effectively, the applicant's aggregating the parcels in order to be able to have the correct size of that facility on the lot, correct?
Correct.
And that is for storage. So if the applicant was theoretically going to sell vehicles from that parcel, would it be able to stand alone as its own application?
Yes, it would be. If it met all the criteria of vehicle sales in the definition, and it was actually operating as vehicle sales as a standalone lot of 112 West 42nd Street, it does meet the minimum lot size requirement for vehicle sales, which is 30,000 square feet, and this is just above it.
Thank you. And just for the sake of me being new, if the applicant was to revise the application for sales, what would that process look like? Would you just cancel this one and then go back through the process for that lot as a sales lot?
Yeah, so we would void this application and then there would be a new application made for vehicle sales specifically for 112 West 42nd Street. And there'd be a whole new analysis based off of that, which would look very similar to this analysis, just isolated to the one lot.
Okay, so at that point, it would just be with the one single lot, wouldn't include any of the other CUPs or other properties that are owned by the applicant. Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Brown.
I would like to follow up if I may, because I think that's an intriguing idea that Commissioner Montoya has put us. So I have that prompted another question. Let's say in the event that that was decided that's the way that we might be able to proceed. And which case, what he would be doing was putting a completely new application in. If we did that and it was limited the project to that lot, all right, then we still would not require any kind of a sidewalk or a pathway on Stockton. That would still remain like it was. That would not trigger any kind of a requirement.
Correct.
And it would trigger a requirement for a sidewalk and or pathway along 42nd Street, but only along that parcel. Is that, am I correct in saying that?
Correct. Yes. Yeah, that's correct.
And it would limit it would eliminate all of the hardscape and the sidewalks and the landscaping that's not on Chinden that would have to be, so none of that would be there. And the 5% of landscaping would apply only to that one lot. Is that correct?
Right. Yes.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Hannah, how much is Verizon, how much sidewalk footage or how much sidewalk are they accountable for just on that one? I think it's 4195.
Right. So the way their conditional use permit was verbalized in that condition, the verbiage, it says that frontage of West 42nd Street. It doesn't say a certain percentage, but it also doesn't say the entirety. But just based off of the verbiage saying the frontage of West 42nd, I would assume as staff, and I would interpret it as the entirety of that West 42nd frontage
Okay,
for that parcel.
gotcha. Thank you. Okay. We will open the public hearing now. Let's see, yeah. If there's anybody that wants to provide testimony for this application, now is the time to do so. We are checking in the room if anybody has signed up to give testimony. But while we're doing that, is there anybody on Zoom that wishes to provide testimony for this application? Okay, so I am going to assume, or I'm led to believe that there is no one on Zoom and we have no signups in the room here for public testimony for this application. So the applicant, you can come back up and provide any rebuttal to anything you've heard or whatever, just yeah, anything you want to provide rebuttal testimony to.
As a salesman, I think I should be really good at this, but sitting right there, I'm not. It would help us a lot if we could get that place where we can keep our stuff. And there's no way that we wouldn't make any money if we would keep our car stored for 6 months. So the whole goal is to move a car as quick as possible. You know, you put a car in and you want to sell it as fast as possible. You don't want to keep something for 6 months just sitting there. I'm new to this. I don't know what to say or how to say it. I want to make Garden City to be a better place. I mean, I moved there. It was pretty rough when I moved there. I mean, I tried to make it to be really nice, and I'm gonna keep it to be really nice. There's right now, if you would go walk there, there is against the 42nd Street. There is a pathway already that we put rocks there that people could walk on there too. It looks really nice and clean right now. Verizon did have some bushes on this side, but they were growing on the building, so it kind of looked pretty messy, and I didn't like it. I don't know really what to say.
Okay.
I feel
No, you're good. We appreciate you being here tonight. We appreciate you being in Garden City. So thank you.
Yeah.
And
oh,
We have a question for you, though.
We get a
Commissioner
shot.
Brown has a question.
Yes.
We get a shot. Okay,
Yes.
I apologize, but this whole discussion has prompted what I think is an important series of questions. And if I understood what you previously said, sir, if we leave it like it is and we disapprove, we don't approve a waiver for the sidewalk pathway requirement, called sidewalk/pathway requirement, and the landscaping requirement that's associated with this, it's your view that you can't afford that. Is that correct?
Yes.
What would your comment be with regard to the idea that Commissioner Montoya presented of a new application, but it would only be for the site where you want to put the building up, but it would require you to alter your objective, and it would have to include the selling and or maintenance of some of your vehicles. What are your thoughts with regard to that?
Would that take like a whole new hearing, new application?
What?
Would that take a new hearing, new application?
Yes, it would be a new application.
I don't know. We'll, I guess I'll pray about it. I act like I don't even know what to say. I'm in one way sounded cheaper because it would be only like that one little lot right there. But again, we have to go to hearing. We have to pay a bunch of money for that sign that we put out there, and then all the application stuff. And I really don't know what to say.
Can I clarify? Because I believe that it may influence the response that the applicant is providing. Right now, we're having a sidebar back there, and we think if the result of tonight's meeting amends this application and it's agreeable to the applicant, this particular application can be amended. We would request that you continue, if it ends up going in that direction, that you continue it so that if any of the conditions aren't just removed, there needs to be a tweaking of those, that we make sure that we get the conditions correct and make sure that we adequately reflect the approval. But we think that we can, as Commissioner Weil just noted, shrink the application, and that it's still the same use, still incorporating the same property. It's not adding to. So, thank you. And that
Mr.
may
Chairman,
influence.
I would like that. That's clarifying.
Commissioner Brown, go ahead.
Jonathan, if I understand it, if we did that, we would be amending this application. You wouldn't have to have any new hearings and everything. We'd have to come back for another meeting, but we wouldn't have to renotice everything. And per what we just described, and it would reduce the conditions and everything so that it would only apply to that one lot. Is that correct?
Chairman and Commissioner Brown, that is the sidebar that we're having back there, that we, as long as we've already noticed and it's already the same use, including the property in question, we would suggest that you keep the public hearing open just in case there's new information that's needs to be addressed in the meantime as well.
Thank you.
Thank
very
you.
much.
Thank you, Commissioner Brown. Thank you, staff. Okay, the public hearing then is closed. Let me back up one second. Did any other commissioners have any questions for the applicant? Okay. All right, so we will close the public hearing then at this point. And we will move to the discussion among the commissioners at this point about this application. Commissioner Brown.
Okay, let me tell you, I have a lot of sympathy and okay, I have a lot of sympathy for the applicant, and I share his desire to make Garden City a better place. And in fact, that is why, in fact, unfortunately, he's engaged in part of our code, which I very much support and in the past have done it, and that being the requirement for sidewalks. Because, and we've been very consistent on this, I mean, very consistent with very few exceptions. Because if we were to do what is being advocated here and waiving these requirements, then the way things are in Garden City, and don't get me wrong, I understand, I've been down in that very area a whole bunch. Garden City, the old way the Garden City used to be, will look that way in 20 years. Because the reason that we don't have sidewalks and pathways and those things right now is because 20 years ago, we didn't have the code proper and we didn't have a commission that was enforcing something had to be done. So I am very much opposed to waiving those requirements. Plus, the real requirement for the sidewalk in the code, as was pointed out by Hannah, the cost being excessively costly is not a matter for us to use as a reason for waiving it. It's right in the code as that not being allowed. So while I'm very sympathetic to the situation and what they're doing and what he's trying to do in its current form, I would not be willing to recommend approval. But I would be, and along with the lines of what we've been talking about, and I want to thank Jennifer getting up here. And I was going on a little bit of a stray there, and she sort of put me in line. But of extending this for another month. Okay, we don't have to renotice everything and do anything like that. Giving the applicant an opportunity to come in and talk to the staff and reduce the scope of the application so that it would fit on the one lot. And then perhaps that would make it possible for him to have the resources necessary to put the necessary landscaping and a sidewalk and or path, because it would only be along that one side on 42nd Street, which would be, I think that's my character, what I'd like to see happen.
Thank you, Commissioner Brown. Commissioner Wild.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I agree with Commissioner Brown. I think that would be a good result. I, like Commissioner Brown, have been here a long enough time to see progress with regard to Garden City's sidewalk system. It's hard because on every application we hear about these hardships and gee, I'm just trying to do my little piece of Garden City. And we hear all kinds of reasons that they don't want to take down chain link fences and they don't want to build sidewalks and landscape their property. But little by little, as Commissioner Brown points out, that makes a real difference. And I think in particular, with regard to the notoriety of this area, the traffic, the growth, this is, so uniquely close to some of our most successful redeveloped areas that I think sidewalks here could make a real difference. So I'm inclined to agree to a date certain bump with a request for an amended application. A reduced application is really what it would be. I will perhaps ask the chair's consent to keep the public meeting open, even though I think you noted it was closed, so that we could, just in case, as Jenna pointed out, or Hannah pointed out, that we may need to offer depending on how the application changes and gets reduced, we may need to consider new evidence, new testimony. So I would request the chair's discretion on that.
Yeah, for sure. Commissioner Montoya.
Thank you, Chairman. I agree with Commissioner Brown and Commissioner Wild as well. I do believe that it's necessary to have sidewalks in those areas, and the difficulty with the current situation of the applicant. And I really do appreciate Commissioner Brown working it and getting a very thoughtful way of potentially solving the problem and also getting the sidewalk as well.
Very good. I would concur with my fellow commissioners. I'm lucky I get to sit next to these three gentlemen because I think they came up with some great solutions as we worked through this application. So I think where we're at here is reopening the application for public comment. So I would like to let the record show that we will do that at this point. And then continue the application, I think is where we're landing to a date certain of next month. Our meeting is April 20th, 2022. Unless I've left anything out, I think that's where we're at, and I believe, might be ready for a motion on this one.
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Brown.
I move that we continue CUP FY 2022 number 9. Conditional use permit. Asmer Alec is requesting the use of vehicle sales at 112 West 42nd Street to a date certain of April 20th.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Aye. We will hear from you again, sir, next month. Thank you for being here tonight. Okay. Okay, the next item we will hear this evening. Subdivision FY 2021-9 Wandering Trails. It's a combined preliminary and final plat subdivision processed as a planned unit development. Julie Miller is requesting a subdivision consisting of 20 residential units located at 512 East 43rd Street. Ms. Miller, you here? All right. It's your turn at the podium for 15 minutes.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Julie Miller, 725 East 2nd Street in Meridian. I'm actually going to pass the first part of our presentation on to our design director, Jeremy Putman, and he will start the presentation.
Hello, Jeremy Putman, 725 East 2nd Street, Meridian, Idaho. And I'm also going to open up some files here. Just one moment. Chair Rasmussen and commissioners, this is the Wandering Trail Townhome subdivision. It consists of 20 single-family attached home units. We are looking to create a small kind of micro community here here on 43rd Street. And the community is going to be connected by a single driveway with cross-access agreement down the center, also pedestrian paths on the north and south sides of the parcel for pedestrian access. The landscape, oops, actually I should be sharing, I apologize, I should be sharing my screen with the viewers online. Okay. Yeah, that's sure. Here we go. The land, so this project has gone before the design review committee a few times, and we've received some good feedback. The last time that we were in front of the design review committee, they did approve it with some conditions that we work with staff that I'll talk about here in just a moment. So we have revised landscape plan that was in question, I think, at the initial hearing when this project was not able to be heard back in January. So we have addressed that, staff comments on that, as well as some of the site comments that were addressed there. Part of what we worked on with the design review committee was our green space. So we did initially provide 10 parking stalls, which is the code for guest parking stalls for this type of a development, but we've reduced that number by 3 in order to provide a little bit more green space. And we've positioned it here in working with the design review committee kind of at the end of this drive aisle as kind of a nice vista. So instead of looking down at the end of the street to see parked cars, this is also green space for dog walking, small play area. We do have also green space and play areas between the 2 sets of buildings on the north and the south. These units are intended to appeal to a diversity of new Garden City residents. Some will be sold and some will be retained for rental. But we are looking for opportunities to get, either young professionals, small families, those, just entering into the housing market in order to participate in the active lifestyle that Garden City does offer with the Greenbelt so close. The garage units that we do have are a little bit oversized for a typical garage, just to make room for things like bicycles, kayaks, things that would be used along the river here in Garden City. Then going to the unit types, each building has a mix of unit types from each structure has 2 3-bedroom, 3-bath units, as you can see right here in the middle. And there is a 2-bedroom, 2-bath with a bonus room downstairs, a 2-bed and 2.5 bath, and then a 2-bed, 3.5 bath that could be used for like a live work scenario. So we're trying to provide different unit types here, and the square footages vary from 1,300 to 1,440 approximately square feet. Pause sharing the screen and pull up some images. So also received feedback from the design review committee and have worked with them, and we will continue to, in part of the conditions of approval, they did approve this design, but they requested a few things that I'll highlight here that we want to keep working, just confirming with staff as part of that approval. I apologize. We've been doing online meetings for 2 years now, and you'd think I'd remember to share the screen. Sorry. Okay. This is a street view of these townhome units. They are a mix of materials of stucco, horizontal metal siding that vary in color, as well as some accent materials. I'm gonna go to the next image that removes the landscape. A exterior tile material that has the appearance of wood, so it becomes a little bit more easily maintained over time. And then also over here is another kind of stone type material along the base. We have tried to diversify the facade itself, especially along the street facing sides. We have entries that access directly from 43rd Street at both ends. Provided some accent features at the request of the design review committee to highlight those entries, and put in some more glazing to create a stronger street connection. Another thing that design review committee asked was to provide a little bit more undulation and variation in the units so that they can be a little bit more distinguished. And so we did work to modulate the facade and change some colors up here so that you can distinguish, between each unit. As you can see, the play of materials. The horizontal metal also kind of changes from a kind of a hunter green to a brown to a silver, and I think there's a terracotta as well. This is the north side. So each of these units is a 3-story unit, and all of them have rooftop patios that face the front range, because we have a spectacular view of that from this vantage point. So each will have access to kind of like a sun deck facing out that way. Then there were also some comments about the site plans, and we'll bring up our civil engineer to discuss that. I'm going to pull up the site plan though and share the screen before I do that. Okay.
Good evening, commissioners. My name is Thomas Hawksworth. I'm with Blue Peak Engineering. Would you like me to give you my address? Yeah.
Yes, please.
Okay. 5609 North Field Crest Drive in Boise, Idaho. I wanted to speak a little bit regarding the aspects of the engineering for the project. There are water and sewer facilities on East 43rd along the project frontage. Our intent is to bring those utilities into the site and provide individual services for each of the units. We are proposing, let's see on here, proposing a fire hydrant within the development in the rear of the, Drew, I'll pull that up. Yeah.
Page.
Yes. There you go. As I mentioned, on the back of the property, we're proposing a fire hydrant for additional fire protection. There's also a fire hydrant on East 43rd Street. The site soils are favorable for infiltration. The geotech has recommended a rate of 8 inches per hour for infiltration based on site soils. The historic groundwater data in the area indicates a groundwater depth of between 8 and 12 feet. During testing for the investigation, they found groundwater about 6.5 to 7.5 feet down. We are proposing, I'll back up to one page here. We are proposing 2 permeable paver systems in the main drive aisle between the townhomes. Those paver systems will pick up a majority of the site runoff, including the roofs themselves of the individual units and the drive aisle in between the 4 buildings. There will also be 2 paver systems in the rear of the site, along with a vegetated swale on the outsides of the townhomes. that will collect runoff from the parking lot in the back, and then the little landscape strip between the building itself and the property line on the outsides of the property. So with that paver system and the fact that we're raising the site about a foot because of the floodplain, we plan to have about 3 to 4 feet of separation between the bottom of that paver system and the groundwater that was found during the investigation. There is a sewer easement at the rear of the property that used to belong to the Bench Sewer District, which is now Boise Public Works. And we've talked with them about our proposed improvements, and in general, they are favorable to what we're proposing in the 30 feet at the back of the property. That sewer line really just kind of clips the northeast corner of the property and then heads outside of our property about midway along that back property line. That really kind of summarizes the engineering aspects of the project. If the commissioners will allow me, we received some concerns that Commissioner Brown had raised in January, and staff had provided that to us. So if I can speak to the summary I was provided, I'd like to do that.
Yes.
One of the concerns was regarding the swales along the outsides of the property and the landscaping in those areas. It's my understanding that the landscape plan has been updated to account for those swales, and that should be, I believe, in the latest staff report.
Yeah, the landscaping plan. This one.
Okay. So it's my understanding that landscape plan has been updated to account for that swale along the perimeter. I don't think we have any large trees in that area, so
No trees.
they've removed that out. One of the concerns that Commissioner Brown raised was the fact that there was a difference in the datum. The datum appeared to be incorrect, and he was right. And it was something that we had caught prior to the hearing last time, and it was simply a bust in the survey. Since that time, we've updated the survey, updated our plans, and those have been resubmitted back to the city, and they should be part of the staff report. One of the other comments or concerns raised was the comment about the drainage plan not retaining the 50-year storm event for the site. In our preliminary drainage study, we included calculations to show that the water quality volume would be captured within the paver system and the vegetated swale. What we didn't do was give ourselves enough credit for how deep that paver system was. So we really only accounted for about half of it. So when we reran those calculations and looked at the rationale method for the 50-year storm event, we have sufficient volume in those paver systems within the common drive and then along the edge perimeter. And there will be 2 areas here in some of the site plan changes that we had. We had basins that we had to move. So we're going to put a paver system here and a paver system over here that will accommodate the drainage at the rear of the property for the 50-year event. I believe there was a comment about the common drive aisle only being 20 feet. I think that was probably just a clarity in where the dimension was picking off on the plan. There's 26 feet, which satisfies the fire department conditions. And I think we had 20 feet before, but I think we were showing but dimensioning something else rather than the limits of the roadway. So I think we've addressed that comment as well. And I don't know if that summarizes all of the comments. That's all I have. So I'm here for any questions. I appreciate the commission's time tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I guess you can stand. for
Okay,
questions.
great. Yeah, we will let the commissioners ask any questions that they may have.
I do.
Commissioner Brown.
I'd like to have the engineer step back here a minute, okay? Thank you. I'm going to go to those 4 questions, and you satisfied me on the 3 and 4, okay? But I just still have some questions about 1 and 2. Number 1 has to do with the integration of the landscaping plan along with your drainage plan. The way the plans are drawn, it shows in those drainage swells, trees and brush and bushes. Okay. And when that was presented to the engineer for review, okay, those are still shown there. So both his comment and my comment was addressed at how it appeared like they hadn't been integrated in that the landscape plan was made, drainage plan was made, not showing anything about the landscaping. As the engineer and myself, I'm a licensed civil engineer also, and we don't see how a drainage swell of that design is going to work with all of the landscaping in the drainage swell.
Yeah, it would not work well if you had trees and shrubs in the swale. You're absolutely right. I don't believe we've received any feedback from the engineer on the latest plan set, but as you can see here, we've removed those trees and the shrubs are on the edges of the swale. And so with those changes made, we feel that we're able to accommodate what we need to for the drainage in those areas.
Did you read the engineer's comments? He reviewed it a third time and
oh, I have not.
he put a whole list of comments out, and that comment is still there. His comment is that, yes, there was a note put on there that there would not be trees within 10 feet of it, but the plans still show the landscaping in the drainage swell.
It doesn't.
Is that correct? Am I
There's
incorrect?
landscaping, but it's not trees.
There are no trees, yeah. And these are on the outside, the edge of the swale. And I think this is consistent with what we'd see here in the valley for drainage and for landscaping at the perimeter of the swale. I apologize, I have not seen his feedback, his comments on the latest plan. So something we're happy to address and respond to. But we feel we've addressed that concern. Because you're right, we don't want to block that swale. It's got to act to get that water out of behind that area. So, but we feel comfortable with the design that we have.
Okay, I have another question, and that's the next question. That had to do with the requirement for retaining a 50-year event on site.
Right.
Okay, that's very one. You have recalculated that, so you believe that you have enough. So apparently that was not provided to the engineer for review. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yeah.
All
Yeah. We had I think we accounted for about almost 400 cubic feet in each of those pavers in the driveway. I think the storage for the 50-year storm was 1,000 cubic feet, and we calculated about 1,500 cubic feet. So we feel more than what's needed in those areas. So I'm confident what we would do in our intent was to incorporate those changes in the construction document phase. We intend to conform to all the city requirements for storm drainage, and I feel comfortable that we are able to do that with the plan that we have.
All right, thank you. Any other questions for the applicant by the commissioners?
Mr. Chair, just a quick
Commissioner
one.
Wild.
You mentioned the reduction of parking from 10 to 7. These are 2-car garages, yes?
Correct.
2-car. With 20 units, many of which are 3-bedroom. I guess I'll just ask it as plainly as I can. How the seven parking spaces are code compliant and sufficient for this number of units?
So as far as code compliance, yes, they meet the dimensional requirements for a typical parking stall. The code does read 1 guest parking for each unit. However, we wanted to provide more green space as the amenity. And so we'll still continue to provide code compliant parking stalls, just a reduced number so we can provide a little bit more grass area. Pardon? Half a stall per unit, yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, we'll move on then to the city staff report. Thank you very much. And as the prior application, you'll have a chance to come back up.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners. This is the Wandering Trails subdivision. It has gone through the process quite a few times and has been in front of planning and zoning a few times already. Therefore, I don't have a lot of additional comments, but I did want to clarify a few things. The most recent landscape resubmittal was from February 18th, and it is online for everyone's reference. It also has it's not typically, or it's not laid out in the typical format where it says resubmittals from February 18th, 2022. It does continue to say resubmittals for the city engineer review. So that might be why it looks a little bit different and maybe not have caught your eye. It does show that there are bushes in this landscaped area in the perimeter landscaping area that will reach about 6 feet tall, which does meet the perimeter landscaping requirements. However, it does not meet the requirements of the 15 or a tree being planted every 15 feet, which is required by the perimeter landscape standards, which they are required to abide by. So there's a little bit of a code conflict in this area by not providing the trees, but by providing the shrubbery that meets the screening standards. The only thing I could potentially discuss with you is the option for a waiver to the perimeter landscaping requirements and maybe not providing a tree every 15 feet like as required. Since this is a planned unit development, they are allowed to ask for that waiver. They just haven't mentioned it in their application and it got brought up tonight. The city engineer review was submitted to the city on, I believe it was the 27th of February. And it did acknowledge the February 18th resubmittals with a bunch of comments, but the most pertinent one being at the very end saying that we have no other comments regarding this application at this time. It is a pre-review. New comments may occur when all necessary information for full review is received. However, said information may be submitted after initial project entitlement. So it is atypical for the city engineer to provide 3 pre-reviews, but saying that it was definitely necessary as there were a few major items to resolve before entitlements were granted to the subdivision. But I guess with that, I stand for questions.
Okay, any questions for staff by the commission? Commissioner Brown.
Let's go. Thank you very much, Hannah. In your draft decision document, in the event that we approved it, is it very specific in there that the construction drawings before they're approved by the city, they would have to resolve the issues pointed out by the engineer?
I don't recall if it's specifically stated, but that is always a requirement when the application goes through the construction plans phase, they have to get approval from the city engineer in order to get their construction plans approved, stamped, and then start constructing. So there's another review process after you recommend approval or denial here today, and then at city council.
So what you're saying is he will get a shot after,
Yes,
because when he did the third review, there was still a lot of stuff on there. Would you not agree?
I would agree there were a lot of outstanding comments.
Thank you.
Any other questions for staff? Okay. Thank you very much, Hannah.
Thank you.
Excuse me a second. I got one more question.
Commissioner Brown.
I talked to Hannah and with regard to in the decision document, I made a suggestion that I thought that on the part of it, condition 13 that you have on there, prior approval of construction plans. Number 13, it read, all stormwater systems must comply with Florida City Code 8-4A-7. And I'm recommended that we add and 4-14. Has that been made, or do we make that? Do we need to do that as part of our decision?
That needs to be done as part of your decision.
Thank you. I apologize for.
Oh, you're good. Thanks for asking. Thank you, Commissioner Brown. Thank you, Hannah.
Thank you.
The next step in the process is for the public hearing. So we will open that up at this point for testimony, I should say. We did have a sign up, but Mr. Hawksworth, you were so you're okay. Okay. He's indicated that he is good, does not need to testify. Is there anybody on Zoom that wishes to provide public testimony for this application? I don't think we have any public testimony coming from Zoom. Okay, so that said, the applicant can now come back up and provide any rebuttal testimony to anything that's come up since they were last up. And one thing I should have mentioned at the start of this is, and I'm just going to say it now just because I should have said it earlier, is this commission is a recommending body for city council. So what we're doing tonight is making a recommendation to city council. So I just wanted to say that. So you go right ahead. Thank you, sir.
Chair Rasmussen, commissioners, we just wanted to come back up and say that, yes, we want to comply with all the Garden City codes specific in regards to grading and drainage. Yet, at this time, it's kind of like the preliminary, this is what we want to provide, and we will provide full calculations showing infiltration rates and things like that to make sure that that is handled. So.
Okay. Okay, great. Further questions for the applicant?
I have no.
I'll have a very brief one. So if we just talked about a waiver that you might need to submit, you're fine with that?
Yes.
I assume. Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Mhm. I'm just going to close out of documents here.
Sure. Okay, we will then close the public hearing at this point. We will move to discussion amongst the commission members. Commissioner Wild.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm supportive of the application. I think they've done I'm not a huge fan of the variety of housing types being, I really like what design review did. I like the kind of shucking and jiving that the applicants have done to get to the place where they are today. And frankly, sometimes it just takes this discussion and conversation to get to a point where it's a better product, a better application, moving front doors to face the street, different housing options, even if they're not different housing types. So I appreciate the kind of live work ideas and things like that in the different floor plans. I do actually, I'm not an engineer, but I do have concerns about drainage. But I think those have been addressed well in this revision and will likely be addressed more fully with regard to this question of integration of landscaping alongside drainage. So I'm supportive of the project alongside Commissioner Brown's concerns about addressing those engineer comments.
Very good. Commissioner Montoya.
I too support the application. I appreciate that the applicant has worked with the design review committee to make the reflective changes as Commissioner Wild has stated. So I do appreciate that. And I did like how you have the different bedrooms on the first floor in some, and you have office in some. And so it just offers some different ways that the community can use that space. So I did appreciate that as well. And I thought that it was, I did like the sun deck. I thought that that was a pretty cool addition and will give some of the residents a place to go and hang out outside where they're not necessarily just down in the plaza. So I liked it. And I would both echo what Commissioner Brown and Wild said about the drainage. I'm not a civil engineer, so I can't speak to that, but with that, I'm good.
Thank you, Commissioner Montoya. Commissioner Brown.
Okay, when I came tonight, I wasn't so sure that I was going to be able to recommend approval. But at this point, let me say that I will recommend approval. I still have a lot of concerns there, but Hannah has reassured me. The engineer's got a lot of stuff that he's going to have to address with the comments that the city engineer provided, because there are a lot of them on there, and they're going to take some attention with regard to. We're going to have to be very careful on how they show the integration of the landscaping along with those drainage swales. And but overall, I'm satisfied that they have addressed those and that they will, along with the addition that when we make the motion, I do have a little amendment that I already mentioned. And so that everybody understands, it doesn't add a new requirement, but it makes it in the requirements that very explicit, the requirement for retaining 50 years. That requirement comes out of section 4-14. And so I will be putting that in along with adhering to the code section 848 number 7, which is the development part of the code. But that's what that does. It makes it very explicit. They have to comply with that. But with that addition, I will be supporting it.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Brown. So I'm in agreement with my fellow commissioners. I like the project. It just seems to me like it was complex, more complex than some of the other ones like this that we've had in the past. And I agree with some of the comments of the other commissioners that y'all took it back and came back with an application that, you know, we can learn about and recommend to city council. So so we appreciate that. And I think we're probably ready for a motion. Hopefully Commissioner Brown is ready to fire away because he had the edits.
Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Brown.
I move that we recommend approval of subdivision FY 2021, number 9, Wandering Trails. And you can all read on the agenda, all the rest of it. With the addition to the decision doc in accordance with findings of fact, conditions of approval, and whatever, there's something else that I'm supposed to say.
Conclusions of law.
And conclusions of law with the addition of an amendment on condition number 13 under those requirements prior to approval of construction plans. So that condition number 13 reads, all stormwater systems must comply with Garden City Code 8-4A-7 and this is the additional part, 4-14.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Those in favor of recommending approval that city council approves this, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Next stop, city council. All right. Thank you very much. Is there anything else, commissioners, that we need to discuss? Staff, anything else for us? Okay, all right. So that said, we are adjourned this evening. Good job.
So that amendment that I made, I've made a suggestion to Hannah and that any development that comes in that's where drainage would be an issue, that needs to be put in there along with what we have been doing.
Okay. That's good.
It's referenced, that part of the code is referenced up at the start of the thing, but it has never been specifically in there.
Okay. What's that? We did.
Okay, good job.